Hello, good morning. Hello, friends. How are you today? Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Alexi Bailey, and this is the Tell It Like It Is podcast. Today we have with us Jennifer Fragoso. How are you today, Jen?
Hey, Alexi, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
All right. I'm glad to see you, and thank you for taking the time to come on today.
Oh, thank you for the invitation.
Yes. So I was talking about your Yankee hat before we got on. Have you been watching anything this season?
In terms of sports, I have been watching a little bit of the Olympics because I have to say, Simone Biles, her courage to really say, I'm just not feeling it, really intrigued me. Because I think everybody thought, she is GOAT. She is the greatest of all time, and everybody probably thought like, oh, okay, this is going to be the continuation. And when she made that decision to pull out and to allow her team members to really shine and then to give herself a moment, I have to say that really intrigued me. That's what made me start watching the Olympics, little clips and things like that. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
It's really a big moment in sports. It's really a big moment in sports. It's climatic in a way with, the mental health culture we have kind of building. And I think it has a lot to do with everything else going on in America.
Absolutely.
Between celebrity culture, Black Lives Matters, and our obsession with materialism, she kind of just said like, the whole world is on my shoulders to win this little piece of metal and to make meaning of this so that I can come back and be this, I do think it definitely was a major turn, in where we're going, and it's definitely a piece of the conversation. What did you make of it?
Well, I think we've been seeing this kind of happening, right? Because we had, to be frank, we had, the Sussexes, Harry and Meghan, and then we had Naomi Osaka, and I'm sure there's far more, that were in this like right before this curve. And then now we have, Simone Biles, like really, shouting it out, like really spelling it out for us, because I feel like with the previous that I just, referenced with Naomi and with Harry and Meghan, I think they alluded to this, right? And they said, listen, this is just something that for me, I can't really take. But Simone just knocked it out of the park. And so I feel like as you kind of mentioned, what's really happening is that as people, our emotional intelligence is just getting higher and higher and higher as adults. But I feel like as I see children, as I see young people, their emotional intelligence is just at this pivoting, it's like a pivotal moment for us, that now young children are kind of getting that, listen, I can't take this, or understanding when people are just, kind of put through it, and that the pressure is just too much for us to sustain all the time. So I think this is it's a culmination of everything, as you mentioned, Black Lives Matter, because emotions are at stake. Ultimately, Black Lives Matter is about saying enough. We can't breathe, literally and figuratively. We can no longer breathe. And so while it is a lot, seeing these things happen makes me so much more hopeful for a better future. This is not the end. These are not the ends. Yes, at some point there'll be a cap, and then the next generation is going to have to move, the needle forward more.
So I'm in a space where I think, our capitalism culture uses people for their financial value and there's no real regard for the person that you're using, right? So
Exactly.
Simone Biles is driving $1 billion industry, and she's just a person, and I think I'm also guilty of, getting caught up in the blind patrioticness of the Olympics. And it, like there's a billboard on my way home that shows the medal count. And I think the Olympics in a lot of ways is not necessarily about, coming together as humans and celebrating the greater good that we all are. And it starts to be a show off. So like when you see the medal count, it's like, America has 52, China has 48. And it's like, we want to have the most medals. And, then you see like the world powers, and then the little countries are just trying to like, oh, we won 3, that kind of thing. And in the end, the individual is just like, I'm burnt out, I'm miserable, I'm 30 or whatever. And what did you really get out of it? All of these things I think it reflects a lot of things that people go through on a day-to-day basis with work and their 40-hour schedules and, the corporate culture and all of these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see a lot of parallels to my own life in some ways. I work in a competitive field. I'm judged by my numbers, and as how we met running, and so I had that competitiveness within my private life as well. But one thing I've always understood is, although in my professional life, I am my numbers. And so I always want to be number one. I've never kind of wanted to be number one and make somebody be number two. Like I'm just thinking about me being number one, but not in a sense trying to drag people down. So in essence, I've always thought that I was competing against myself. And I think for a lot of these athletes, that's probably what it is too. They're always competing against themselves, except for, when you're on the Olympic stage, obviously there's a 1 gold medal winner and 1 silver medalist and 1 bronze medalist. But what you've seen with, Simone and so many others, and I'm sorry, I don't remember their names, but the Italian and the, was it the Emirates, United Arab Emirates, where they shared the gold medal?
Yes, I did.
And, so many different, I think swimmers, getting like back to back, like 1 millisecond. You're seeing now these athletes really identifying with the spirit of this competitiveness, of being like, okay, I just want to be the best that I can be, and embracing that Olympic, what we should aspire to be, the Olympic spirit, which is how are we all propelling ourselves to be better rather than who is the loser. And I think Simone, really embracing that bronze medal as like, this is going to be my favorite. I think that's another like pivot moment of where we're pivoting. It's like, I overcame so much. Right. And so I don't care if it was gold. This is truly, my heart. And I think that that's what kind of we're seeing. And I think that when we have responsible people that are putting this forward, marketing is going to follow, because again, when you want to sell and when there's money behind it, you're not really interested so much in what's going to do it. You just want to do it, right? So if we have people that are really brave enough to say, this is what we want, marketing is going to follow. And when marketing follows, then we're starting to like have representation, and we're going to see where culture is going to mirror advertising, and advertising is going to mirror culture. So although capitalism can be a dirty word, it also can be, a point of freedom. As long as capitalism is being driven by people who are saying, capitalism is nothing without people. If you do not promote the worker, and in this case, it could be anything, right? The worker is the athlete. The worker is anything, any person. If you are not promoting people, then what is capitalism for?
Right.
What is all the money for? Is all the money to be stockpiled in a bank? No, the money is for all of us. And so to create a culture that embraces education, embraces, that spirit of really overcoming your own obstacles and, making the best out of your own life. That's what we need to do. And we need to start saying to ourselves, what are we investing our money in, if not people? People are our greatest resources. Now, people have created the technology to have computers and have platforms and have all these systems, but without people programming them, they're nothing.
And using them.
Exactly. So it's put people first. And so I think all these things that are happening are kind of, for me, what I see long-term, it's putting these pieces together.
So you sound hopeful about where we're going.
I do. I know I do. And there's a lot of muck, but I do. As I'm seeing these little things, I'm not a linear thinker. As soon as I see one thing, I start connecting all these dots, and my language can kind of never really hone in and express exactly what I want. If I sit down and write it, I have, proper time to edit it, and I can kind of come up with it. But I just start to see everything in this like really big picture, and I connect the dots in those ways. And that's what I see. I see representation happening. And with representation, you have like a broader mindset, and the community around you has a broader mindset. And so, it opens up possibilities. And so that for me is hope.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about how you grew up?
Sure. So I grew up in Connecticut. I come from an immigrant family. I'm the second person born in this country of my family.
Where were they from?
Portugal.
Okay.
Yeah, both my mother and father are Portuguese, but not from the same area. They met in the United States. So they were in the Portuguese community. And I have close ties to Portugal, went there, often as a child, and from 13 on would go there every summer. We had a beach house there, like a little beach apartment. And so I do have very close ties to that country. I'm very familiar with it. I speak the language, some days better than others. And yeah, so I grew up in a kind of close-knit family.
What was the contrast like going from the United States to Portugal? Like, how were you received? What did you see there? How did it frame America for you?
Oh, when I was a kid, I almost like didn't really like being called American, because I was looked at as American in Portugal, and yet I felt very Portuguese because I was, really in that community here. And when you're from an immigrant community in the United States, you often identify with the immigrant side. And they would call, I had friends that called me gringa, and I was an American there, and I was always like, why can't I be Portuguese? But as I grew up, I just started to embrace, being American and identifying with it. And especially during the time, it's funny because we're going to circle back around to the Olympics, especially around the time of, the Olympics, because you hear the national anthem a lot. And then obviously we have, all the medal counts and everything like that. And so, but I think it's because ultimately what I saw, and this is the kind of thing about the medal counts, right? The medal counts are so high for us as a country in the United States because we have so many people from so many different areas.
Absolutely.
So we get talent from everywhere. And then when you have like over the years, this mixing of talent and ideologies and all of this stuff. So you have like this beautiful rainbow of people representing so many different cultures, with the backdrop of the American flag. And so to have, to have the previous administration in the White House to have such disdain, for that which has made us so much richer in culture and in medal counts and things like that. It was so sad. It was a sad moment, but by then I had already really identified as an American, through and through. I have a Portuguese heritage and I am Portuguese in the sense that, that culture that I come from, but I am American in the sense I believe in the aspirations of this country, of taking people and, building bridges of trust through dialogue and through hard work and effort. This spirit exists here, even though oftentimes we're put upon and really, really made to, come out from under. It still is a spirit that is only identified, in the United States.
I do think America is a very special place. That mixing pot, like you said, that rainbow, the democracy, the freedom, we have all of these things that we're leading the future in terms of what a country should have, what the way humans should be treated, and at the same time, we still have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. There are so many failures, but we're human beings,
Right.
We fail.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're human beings and we fail, but we are always like, there's always somebody in America that'll be like, check yourself. You better check yourself. So and they don't necessarily get put in prison, and I say necessarily because I do believe, that mass incarceration is just abhorrent. And, it really is. It's a shame and a stain on this country. But for the most part, we don't live in Belarus, right? We don't have that police state. And again, Black Lives Matter, I believe that is real, but ultimately we don't have that kind of system where if you do protest, you're you might get yourself put in jail, but you will come out, right, for protesting. I mean, we have a lot of people, former Senator John Lewis said, how many times he was imprisoned and he did it for the right reasons, to protest against the atrocities that are committed on a daily basis in order to propel maybe like, this crazy ideology that, one is better than all. And I don't believe in it or subscribe in it.
What do you think is holding us back to being our best selves as Americans?
This political infrastructure that is centered on this idea that in order to succeed, you have to put something down. And I think, I don't necessarily know ideologically speaking what it is, but it's this, again, nonlinear. It's this idea that in order for me to succeed, somebody has to fail. And, there's this too, this like, why do I have to pay for them?
Right.
I mean, for me, it's like, why not? Like for me, I mean, really in the most simplistic form, right? Why don't I, as a leader, want everyone to have a chance at a really great education? I mean, we have NASA, we have the space program, we have so many things that we need. We need capable successors to run and to outrun. We want to get to Mars. We want to get here. We want to get there. How do you think you get there? You get there by raising, children who will, carry that forth, will be smart enough, will be brave enough, will have courage, that have been, given an opportunity to excel. And then, okay, so beyond that, beyond these high achievers, right? You also say, okay, but we have all these high achievers. Where does everyone go? Why don't we see value in everything? Why don't we see value in the, train conductor? Why don't we see value in the, MTA officer? Why don't we see, I'm sorry, I'm using all these transportation.
I would the quick answer that comes to mind is because they're replaceable.
But are they? You know what I mean? Like, okay, what I see is when I see a subway coming into the station, I see somebody who is helping me make my money and who's helping me get to work safely. Like, they're a part of my life. They're making my life better. When I'm at a restaurant and somebody is serving me, they're helping me make my life better. I'm off. I've just worked. I've just done this. I've just done that. Like, it's a time of relaxation and rest. Hi, what's your name? They're helping me in my life make it better. They're enhancing my life. Sorry, that's an enhancement to my life.
So Jennifer, I feel like, and I could be wrong, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like what you're saying is a very humanistic viewpoint, and I feel like there's a lot of energy that's not along that path, right? Do you see that as well? Like, what is that? What can you, like, everyone's not thinking like you, right?
Yeah. And sorry, I cut you off.
That's a part of the problem. That's a part of what we're talking about, right? The people who aren't thinking like you.
Yeah, but okay, so I mean, yeah, but also I don't think that I'm the end all be all of everything. So I'm using myself as an example, right. But I don't think
you're saying you value MTA workers, you value the restaurant servers, you think we should be spending just as much as we give the NASA and the space program and all of these endeavors, we should be giving to education. We should be giving to, the less fortunate, to make sure that we have a balanced America so that everyone can, the next generation can move up and lead the charge and become the Americans that keep America being what it is and grow America. Mm-hmm. Like, I hear that in what you're saying, and I'm saying to you, this is not across the board, right? And we're still arguing for this.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, what's the other side of that? What do you see the other side of that? Have you exposed to those opinions and those ideas?
I mean, thankfully, I'm not super exposed to a lot of that because I live where I live in New York City, and it's a beautiful, like, amalgamation of everything.
But how do you understand that?
I just think it's I think some people have been misled in a lot of ways into subscribing with an otherness, whether it be their own mental health, whether it be the news that they read, or the people that they subscribe to in terms of how they're getting their information, and how they're interpreting it. How people are coddling their own fears with this sense of otherness, and like, oh, it's that person, I don't know if you know this, and it's not like a huge thing, but in terms of, knowing or not knowing, but I chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. I have been chanting since I moved to New York, shortly afterwards. And when you said humanism, and that's where it comes from. I'm Buddhist. I chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and it's a humanistic spiritual practice, which is also could be considered a religion. But I use the word practice because it is a practice. I chant morning and evening, and I study and I support other members, and I try to change myself versus changing the environment, because when I change, my environment changes. So changing doesn't mean, oh, I'm a bad person, I have to change. It means, okay, I did that. That person or that situation went this way. How could I maybe do things differently so maybe there's a different result? How can I change my perception, my reaction, my way of thinking, or how can I change my fear, transform my fear into something positive? Because usually when we're afraid, we're like, because I know I have points of fear, like the millennials, like triggered. I was triggered. Yeah, that's usually fear. Right? So, I know when I'm triggered, I'm like, ooh, I was afraid of something and I lashed out, it was a quick, I think that's what's happening. I think that a lot of people are afraid and they're not quite sure how to manage those fears. And so we have this kind of culture of being very reactive and being opposed and canceling and, all those things. None of those things are so bad, but it's how is it happening? You mentioned in the beginning of the show, or maybe when we were talking about what we were going to talk about, how we need to listen to one another. We need to talk to one another. And just because somebody's ideologies are different than mine doesn't mean that we can't be friends even. Like that's how we learn.
Right.
We learn by, seeing other people's examples. Most of the things, Alexi, that I've ever done in my life that I've been like super stoked that I've achieved, it's because somebody put something in my ear. Somebody said like, oh, I'm going to do, I think marathoning. My friend Kasumi, when I first moved here, she's like, yeah, I did the New York Marathon 8 or 9 times. I was like, oh, I want to do the marathon. And then here we are, like 13 marathons later.
Absolutely.
So that's how we do it. And I think that's what's kind of happening. We're not, as a culture.
My apologies.
Siri. As a culture, I think we're not embracing, shared experience and, and embracing like the unknown and embracing fear and going, okay, how are we working together to change this? And how am I changing myself? And, seeing my environment change. I hope that answered your question.
It does. No, it does. It does. So a part of this whole thing for me, the podcast and everything that I do is, we can all think something in our head, and the question is it valid? And I think we tend to associate with people who think like us, right? And it's just a natural psychokinetic kind of thing, It's not even visual. It's just, you just gravitate in that direction. Like you said, we gravitated to each other. So, I'm still trying to connect all the dots, and I want to attract people with different points of view, and I want to understand the way they see things, because I'm assuming we're speaking liberal, but the other side of that is, people who have fear and they're reacting to something someone said, and as opposed to the greater good. So I'm just trying to understand their rationale. and connect all the dots and, you know, move forward in a way that we can say America is getting better. And we should be able to agree on what better is. That way we can actually get there.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a very good point. We should agree on what better is. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know that, you know, again, like I was, you know, when I say I'm hopeful, it's because the images that I'm seeing, you know, produce that feeling of hope in me. And I was speaking to a colleague and she mentioned, she goes, yeah, but you know, maybe those are the images you're seeing because, you know, you live in New York City. And so, you know, I'm watching things on Hulu and Hulu knows what my likes are because, you know, computer, they all know what your likes are. You know, you talk about, oh, I want to buy a mattress. And then all of a sudden that's all you see on your feed is mattresses, you know, because, you know, somebody's listening. But when she's saying, what if, you know, in, I don't know, let's say, you know, Corpus Christi, Texas, you know, somebody's watching Hulu, but that's not, you know, what's represented on Hulu. So yeah, we have to identify culturally what, you know, what do we see as better? And we have to make sure that everybody kind of gets that message. And I don't think everybody's getting that message. You know, I don't think everybody's gotten the message that, you know, if you live in West Virginia and you were, you know, displaced from your home because, you know, the jobs in the coal mine or, you know, were all, you know, gutted. Somebody in New York City wants you to have, you know, the education to start a new career. We want West Virginia to be the next hub of something else. Like we're not trying to take away from you. We want you to have those benefits. You know, we want the coal company that left you high and dry. We would like for them to, you know, reinvest in something else. You know, so I think that's the message that should be shared. But unfortunately, I mean, it used to not be like this. You know, Alexi, I think you probably remember, you know, when politics was a bit more civil. But, you know, now you really have this narrative of like, it's us against them. I mean, it's just horrendous. It should be us and us, you know, and some slightly different ideologies about, you know, how it's shaped. But to have public servants who literally won't engage in dialogue to come up with a solution, you know, on how to pay for infrastructure or how to do anything for their constituents is ridiculous. If I didn't show up to work, I wouldn't get paid. And part of their work is dialogue and, you know, caucusing and conversing and, you know, thinking and writing and, you know, but all of that is for their constituents.
So I tend to entertain the idea that they benefit from the divisiveness.
Yes. You put it the most eloquently. And that was, again, what I was trying to get at, but sometimes I'm not so.
You're nailing it. Don't worry.
Thank you. But yeah, there's a benefit to them. How much money does Mitch McConnell have? I mean, seriously. I don't think when he came into office, he had that much money.
Right.
And yes, Miss Cho, his wife, comes from a very wealthy background, but no, you know, they benefit. And I mean, benefit is like a very kind word, you know? Yeah.
So one of the things that bothers me is when politicians say things that's perceived as hate. You know, it's one thing to say, you know, there's less jobs, but it's another thing to say these illegal immigrants are taking your job. It's another thing to say it's an Asian flu. Like, these things are breeding hate into America. And
Yep.
I think we have to call that for what it is. Like, if you're running for office, and or if you're in office and you say something like that, I mean, that's very, very serious. You know, if you're, you know, America is a place where everyone is entitled to have a gun. And America is a place where mental health is not 100%. And when you have the leaders of your country saying these kinds of things, and you're unemployed and you're depressed and you're going through it, you know, it leads to things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. I don't know if you know, yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of that Texas shooting in Walmart.
Oh.
And do you think that's directly related to Trump and, you know, the rise in hate crimes that we had during Trump?
I mean, yeah. The simple answer is yeah. Absolutely. You're so right, because if you are already, you know, questioning your life and wondering, and oh, that's the person, that person did it to me, and then you have someone who's supporting that at the highest level, I don't care what data is brought out, that it is at some point, you know, talk about trickle down economy, that's a trickle down mental state, you know, that's trickling down the hate. And so, yeah, that's a direct result. Absolutely. And no accountability. Right. We haven't seen any real accountability for any of the things that person said that used to reside in the Oval, you know, used to have an office in the Oval Office. You know, I mean, no accountability yet. None.
But I mean, all right, let's say Trump was terrible. He was all of those things. As a Republican, as a Democrat, as an independent, I feel like they should, instead of profiting off of the negativity that took place, we should now be saying, all right, let's heal. Let's move forward. You know, this wasn't right. This happened, that happened. And like I said before, the fact that they're benefiting and they're not attempting to undo this, I feel like I'm worried about that. You know, I'm worried that we're in this kind of place. And I feel like the average person sees it in a very clear way.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
So you have this group of people that support you, that you think support you, and you kind of let them, you give them a pass. You see the hate speech, you see the deaths. Like, this is terrorism. You're using politics for local terrorism, and then we never call it terrorism because they're white, and like all of these things are like tearing America apart, like right in front of our faces.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I completely agree. The scary thing to me is that I'm not an expert. You know, it's weird that I have to like be this person who's saying this thing. Meanwhile, people with PhDs and psychology degrees and all of these things are kind of like, you know.
Well, see, the thing about it, I mean, other than, listen, Jim Jordan and who's that other guy that's like a doctor, but like, I don't know, like they're saying it, but they're perpetuating it. You know, there are plenty of people in the mental health profession that are calling these things out. Dr. Fauci is calling things out, you know, but these people are in their position for 4 years or 2 years. And this whole cycle of getting money, you know, they should be sponsored. They should have the patches, wear the patches like NASCAR, because that's what they're doing. We have a lot of changes that we have to do. I think President Biden is doing a good job, and he's like Grandpa Joe. He's like, let's heal. That was part of his platform. So I feel like he's doing a great job with that, and, getting infrastructure passed too through dialogue. That already gives me more hope. But we have to be better. We have to change campaign finance laws one way or the other. Again, like what I was saying, one way or the other. We have to, as a people, change ourselves so that our environment changes. Because if as a people, we start changing the way we respond and behave to these things and calling these things out for ourselves, and with our money, believe me, somebody's going to change, because that's just how it works. That is just how it works. You have to give somebody the incentive to change. And so one way or another, we have to do it. So grassroots works, what Cori Bush is doing and how she got into office, listen, that's a testament to when you change, your environment changes. She is doing great work. So one way or another, we will do it. We just have to keep on message. We just have to keep going. And I think one thing that we all need to understand fundamentally as human beings is that we make a difference, that one person can change so much. And so don't diminish your ideology, your beliefs. Don't let your light, come down. Keep going in the face of adversity. Keep going, because when you change, your environment changes. So propelling the individual in the sense of like, I matter to the world, my ideas, my contributions. Again, that's saying like, there's value in everything, right? There's value in the scientists, there's value in Dr. Fauci, right? But there's also so much value in all the people in the lab, getting things done. I used to actually have the great privilege to work in Hollywood. And though I don't feel Hollywood is a meritocracy at all, it can be in some ways, right? Just like everything. But there's also different influences. And when you come from a family that's been working in Hollywood, of course, you're going to have doors open for you. So, that conversation that's been opened aside, one thing was that when you worked on a show that got an award, and I used to work on the Warner Brothers lot, people would congratulate you. And I always used to think that was really weird, because it was like, the people on the show, I thought, got the award, not really me. But no, it's because everybody understood that you were a part of that success. And so I think, in the USA show and the America show, we should all identify that we're all a part of the success or the failure, but we want to be a part of the success, right? So what we do helps that success, or helps propel the engine of success. So
some would assume that you're white. Do you identify as white?
No, yeah, I never know what to put down. I don't, because it's like, the definition of somebody who is Hispanic is, or at least it was at some point, I think maybe they changed it, was someone of the Iberian Peninsula, of which Portugal is. It's part of the Iberian Peninsula. So I always kind of considered myself Hispanic, but I guess I look white, so I don't know. I'm Jen.
Well,
but I will say this though. The interesting part of that is now through this culture, what I've identified is I have privilege. And I have to be responsible in thinking about that. Anywhere I walk into, I can be Jen, and I'm not looked at as a threat in any, or perceived as a threat. If I saw this one time, somebody was asking a young girl at an ice cream counter, they forgot their cash, and they appeared to be white. And they said, I just need, I can come back tomorrow or whatever and give you money. Like, will you just, and I was walking by, so I only peripherally heard the conversation, but I thought to myself, I wonder if that person was of color, how that conversation would go. You know what I mean? Because it's like, because I thought to myself, I could probably do that and somebody would spot me money. But I wonder if if I was a person of color, how that would go. And so, yeah, so I have to understand that although I may not consider myself something, I have a privilege because of the way that I look, and I have to be responsible about that.
So in your experience in America, have you had any experiences where you were treated as the other?
No, not to my knowledge, nothing that ever kind of like really I mean, wait a minute, as being a woman, yes. Yes, because there is that. Yeah, I mean, catcalling and rude remarks and being told that I should smile and those kinds of things. But yeah, in terms of and not feeling secure or safety. Yeah.
As a woman, you mean?
Yeah, as a woman, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is the cat calling, being asked to smile, is that do you have feelings around that?
Well, I grew up, I was born in the 70s and I grew up in the 80s. And so we just smiled and dealt with it, like that was our,
right.
You just try to like worm your way out of it. You don't address it. You just, so yeah. So, when I see young women really asserting themselves and saying, no, this is not right, I'm so proud of them.
Now I have to acknowledge that as a guy and growing up through, I went to high school in Queens, New York City. So I'm familiar with the whole being asked to smile and catcalling and those kinds of things. But I realized that women really have a difficult time, whether it's the boardroom, whether it's teenage girls, as a nurse, trying to get equal pay and all of these complexities. Like, I'm still shocked about how unequal things are. The women's suffrage movement was, in my opinion, like a long time ago, and it's still like, men are still holding the power. Whether it's from Hollywood to, and this whole thing, when we're talking about moving forward, I'm very passionate. I consider myself a feminist. I'm very passionate about what breaking down all the walls and talking about them so that people can kind of understand, and it's interesting because you're right. There is now these things have, I'm assuming, existed 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And now we're getting to a point where women are calling it out, and being asked to smile is like unacceptable and this kind of thing. And it's really an interesting time. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very interesting. And I think to like circle back to, I think one of your questions and like, about how everybody's benefiting from this, the structure of government and so forth. I think as you begin to see women in more leadership roles, especially hopefully soon, a woman in the White House, I think we're going to see a more equitable present and future. I think we're going to see a lot less of what is happening, because while we could still, or women could still benefit from it, right? Women are intuitively much more gracious, I think, than men. And we understand that, the world is a much better place. Our lives are much better when everybody kind of wins, like whether it be the mom that understands that, oh, you know what, why am I going to fight the kids? They want mac and cheese. Let's make them mac and cheese, or something like that. I'm not saying women are pushovers. I'm just saying that women, you know, we can see the forest from the trees, right? And we don't always hold firm to antiquated ideologies because I don't know why, but just because, you know, like just because we're like, we just want to get it done. And, you know, what way is going to get it done is going to be great. And as long as everybody wins, it, you know, I win. And I don't think necessarily that's maybe a male trait, but maybe I could be getting to, you know, immersed in sexual politics. But I really do think the more women we see in power, the less of this kind of these shenanigans we'll see. I think, and to also say that while I am in some ways disparaging, you know, white male centric power, it's not to say that there's not a value to, you know, men or,
absolutely.
You know,
Right. Absolutely.
Like, it's like, we just have to work together. You know, I like men, you know, I like working together with men. I like a male perspective, but, you know, guys, it's okay to be soft. You know, it's okay to get in touch with your emotions. It's okay to like not win all the time. You know, it's okay to listen. We want you to listen. We want you to want to hear us. And if you don't understand, we also want you to ask questions. So, yeah. So it's not like, oh, you know, oh, in order for women to succeed, men can't. No, it's just like, let's just do it together. And I do see also, again, hope, because when I see young boys sometimes talking about things, the way that they talk about things, the way they're like, oh, that's like, no, that's not good. And, you know, don't do that, you know, you know, like their emotional intelligence is getting higher and higher. And they're understanding that, you know, girls are like their counterpart. It's not, you know, like running like a girl is like, oh man, she's really fast, I want to run like her.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
All right, Jen, let's take a brief break and we'll be back for part 2.
Okay. What time should you come back?